Why do we teach? The decision to become a teacher is a very, very important one. You probably even haven't realized how big it is. And so I'm inviting you to think about it. When you become a teacher, you begin doing work that affects not only your own well-being, but it will also affect the future, the thinking, and the quality of being of every young person with whom you come into contact. It's one of the most life-changing careers on this planet. And you have chosen to join this profession. When we did the professional studies module together, we looked at how your identity as a teacher affects all aspects of your being in the classroom. Now you're about to enter into that classroom, and you'll be able to see for yourselves how knowing about yourself and the way that you make choices in the classroom is a very important part of your interaction with the children. When we looked at values, I asked you to consider adopting the value of self-respect. That was a while ago, and perhaps by now you've forgotten our discussion on values. I think the most important aspect of all of those conversations is that when you have self-respect, you begin to realize that you are responsible for yourself and for your own behavior. We also begin to realize that the way that we treat other people is a real reflection of the kind of people that we ourselves are. Take your best self into the classroom, the one that you would be most proud of, and treat the best selves of the learners. It makes a difference. As we slowly gain an understanding of the teaching and learning process, we come to understand that those of us who made the choices to become teachers actually began serving an apprenticeship from the very day that we entered our own schools. We have been exposed to the good or the bad practices of our own teachers for a minimum of 12 years. As postgraduate students, we had another 3 years added to that number. So for a minimum of 15 years, you have been observing teachers in action. This is probably the longest period of apprenticeship on earth. And because we've been exposed to it for so long, by the time we enter into teacher education institutions, we already have a really good idea of what teachers should do, how they should behave, and the way that teaching and learning happens. You've probably all seen those visual comparisons between a motor car of 50 years ago and a motor car from current times, a phone from 50 years ago and a phone from current times, a classroom from 50 years ago, and a classroom from current times, which looks exactly the same as a classroom from 50 years ago. The suggestion is that everything is changing and developing except education. And that suggestion could not be further from the truth. Education has changed radically, even since you were at school. Research has exposed us to people like Vygotsky and social constructivism. We have come to understand that the world is becoming a smaller, globalized fraternity. We know that we are currently sitting at the dawn of the fourth industrial revolution and that technology is speeding up the process of change and development. We know that teaching factual information is no longer as important as it used to be, because those facts are available to everyone at any time. Google knows it all, and therefore, so can we. And even more importantly, those facts can change at any time as more knowledge is made possible through technological advances. Just think about it. In 1930, Pluto was declared a planet. We all learned that, believed it, and some of us taught it. Then in 2006, it was momentously demoted and is no longer a planet at all. Every textbook written before that date was suddenly incorrect. And so it will be with many facts as time passes. As technology makes new knowledge possible and as our thinking changes, different alternatives will open up to us. Facts have become fluid and no one truth exists any longer. Where does that leave us as teachers? How are we going to build the future generations of the world when even a 6-year-old can Google an answer and often prove us wrong? How do we know what to teach? All of this has made us realize that although we were apprentices of the teaching profession for such a long time, the biggest and most crucial lesson that we can learn is that we should not and must not teach like our own teachers, simply because the world is different now. And we need a different approach to the teaching and learning process. And children need to be equipped with different skills. You know that I'm ancient. But when I was young, there were essentially 3 jobs that women could do if we wanted to work and not just stay at home and have babies. We could be nurses, teachers, or secretaries. Today, the choices are limitless. And new jobs are being developed literally on a daily basis. Current research suggests that our learners will be entering a world where 65% of today's jobs will no longer exist. And 50% of the companies that function today are predicted not to be around anymore. Huge wealth has been generated by cryptocurrencies. They didn't even exist 5 years ago. How do we help our children to be more adaptable to their changing futures, while we are still grappling with adapting to change ourselves to accommodate the present? Very soon, the learners whom we teach now will begin to be the adults who will eventually make the major decisions that will control world history. And it is our job to prepare them for this role. It becomes very clear that teaching them in the same way as our teachers taught us is not even going to begin to take on that challenge. Much research has been conducted into finding the appropriate ways of educating learners to equip them to meet and face the challenges of their own uncertain futures. If we look at the ways that the world has changed over the last 10 years, then it becomes very clear that we do not have the faintest idea of what even the very close future holds for us. Already, all of us who own smartphones have invited artificial intelligence into our homes. And there is already an artificially intelligent robot called Sophia. Look for her on YouTube, who has been granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia. And she travels the world trying to teach mankind about itself. So, if factual information should no longer form the essence of our teaching, then what is teaching all about? In the new and slightly frightening world that is rapidly approaching with its unpredictability and fluidity, we need flexible thinkers and problem solvers. And so the role of education, the role of the teacher, the role of teaching becomes one of inviting and encouraging critical thought, teaching learners to think for themselves, guiding them to weigh their options, encouraging them to be empathetic and interested human beings, giving them a sense of agency. This is truly preparing them to face and contribute to the world that awaits. And this vital, this crucial task lies squarely in your hands. So go now and do it.